Swy-zick, and you're listening to the Bacon Bits and Bytes podcast. This is where a bit of business and a bite of technology come together. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Bacon Bits and Bytes podcast. Today with me, I have Ben Zimmer and Amy Leask, co-founders of Enable Education. Enable Education is out to revolutionize education and empower the workforce. They create award-winning online learning solutions and provide content creation services that engage learners from preschool to professional. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you.
Great to be here.
Yeah, very excited.
Very excited as well. So I'm curious to know, how did Enable Education start? An education background?
We do. Before we started Enable Education and during part of our growth of Enable Education, I taught for 11 years, everybody grade 9 and up, including adult learners, and I taught a whole bunch of different subject areas. And Ben also.
Thank you for clarifying which of us is which. I think that's important. Yeah. Well, it's funny. So myself, because we are, and if it's not clear, it'll come up eventually. Might as well be really clear. We're also partners in life. So we've been together for a very long time. My parents were both teachers. Your parents were both teachers. Our sisters are teachers. Everyone around us is teachers. And for myself, I often joke that I was the black sheep of the family that didn't go into education. I did not start off as a teacher. I started off as a software developer and working in the automation industry, amongst others. And fast forward to today, like in The Godfather, they say, I thought I was out, but they pulled me back in. Fast forward to today, here we are with an education company that we're running. And so for me, through that journey from being a technician, someone creating technology, to teaching at Humber College and for a little while at Sheridan as well in the applied technology programs, it was a very natural evolution because we both kind of came from a teaching world, and it's something that is kind of in your blood.
Yeah. And another interesting sort of tidbit about Enable Education is that we actually incorporated during a teacher's strike.
That's right.
It was sort of a side hustle for a while, and 2006?
2006. All of the college profs in Ontario went on strike.
And we decided if we were going to have a several week-long unpaid vacation, we might as well do something useful with ourselves. And we might as well do something useful with ourselves. And we set up our incorporation papers and got an accountant, and it sort of snowballed from there. We haven't looked back.
That's right.
Wow, that's amazing. All right, so let's dive right into the questions. So how do learning materials for the classroom differ from those intended for professional development or training? And would you be able to provide a few examples?
Not quite as much as you'd think they would, and I was always, surprised. I taught, when I was a classroom teacher, I taught older students or teenagers and up. And I was always really surprised at when I talked to someone who taught at the elementary level, that we had a lot of the same challenges and a lot of the same successes, and we used a lot of the same methods. And I think we've found, of course there's differences, but there's also a lot more similarities between teaching, in a K-20 classroom and teaching, grown-ups in industry or in commerce. We're finding, one similarity, it's kind of a new thing, is that grown-ups want to play too. It's always been okay if you're younger to want to play your way to learning, to have games and, rewards and that sort of thing. But we're finding that our corporate and industrial clients are asking more and more for gamified learning and for badging and for, immersive experiences. Do you want to speak a little bit to that too?
Yes. And I would say that the differences between the learning or even the teaching and training experience between a classroom and corporate, the difference is quite small when training is done well in a corporate setting and when it's done with a lot of intentionality. The benefit of a classroom experience is you have a teacher at the front who's been trained to be a teacher, who's been hired. The unfortunate reality a lot of the time for corporations is you have a subject matter expert who is great at doing a thing and who oftentimes by default, sometimes by not standing backwards fast enough when asked if they'd be willing to train, becomes a trainer. And without ever being taught how to train, without ever really learning how people learn. And so I think that's one of the biggest challenges in corporate training as I see it, is that it's just done ad hoc a lot of the time without a tremendous amount of planning, without a tremendous amount of monitoring and continuous improvement. And I mean, frankly, that's where we've found success, is filling that gap, because we stand in both of these worlds with a lot of experience in education ourselves, but more so our teams. And that's what we provide, is that glue between, the term is pedagogy, educational pedagogy, and, providing that as a support mechanism for companies.
Interesting. So with respect to learning about how people learn, what would you say makes a 21st century learner different, and how do you meet their needs?
That's a really interesting question, and we're seeing, it's kind of exciting and a little scary at the same time. Knowledge and bare facts, which were kind of currency when we were learners, when we were in the classroom, when dinosaurs roamed the earth. We're dating ourselves here. But that was, we were expected to know things. And a 21st century learner is expected to know how to learn and how to think. The stuff, the knowledge, the bare facts, the data, everybody's got access to that now. It's no longer sort of the gold ribbon or the blue ribbon anymore. It's more about teaching people how to think than what to think. And that branches off into, all kinds of different forms of literacy, computer literacy and health literacy and environmental literacy. It encompasses critical thinking and creativity and collaboration and communication. So soft skills, despite the fact that we're living in a digital age and, so much of what we need to learn is technology based, soft skills are coming back and becoming, a real turning point for a lot of people. And I always find it's kind of funny that they're called 21st century skills, because these are the skills that, that existed, back in ancient Greece, and, people 2,000 years ago were trying to learn them. So it's almost like a little renaissance that's happening.
For sure. And, and to add to that, this idea of a skill or a competency versus knowledge. And, for me to put my lens on corporate training, a lot of times the experience when someone new starts their job, they might have a binder on their desk of hundreds of pages of processes and health and safety and policies and all that great stuff. And that informational stuff is, you can learn it a bunch of different ways, but it is never what gets people excited, and it doesn't get retained easily. And now that we all have these wonderful rectangles in our pockets with the sum of all human knowledge, not to mention access to the policies on health and safety or where to park or how to make tea, you can make the very basic, boring, informational stuff available at people's fingertips really easily using digital platforms. But you still need to inspire people to share in the corporate vision. You need to provide aspirational guidance to people as to why they should care about this is the way we treat our customers, or this is the way we treat each other. And so what you can find is by using technology and meeting people where they live from a relevancy point of view, from things that will drive them to make a big difference in a company, you can make that stuff really, really effective, and you can optimize the time you spend face-to-face with someone, giving them the aspirational pieces, giving them the guidance, giving them the inspiration, and don't put them in a 3-hour lecture about the health and safety.
I would add one more thing. The whole idea that there is such a thing as a typical learner or a typical educator. I think that's something that's sort of dissipating a little bit in the 21st century learning, learning world, people want to be recognized as individuals. We want to be, I'm this kind of learner and this is my background and this is what I need. So the idea that, a learner is a kid who's any age, who could be in any situation, who could be in any career path. So that's something that's very, that's becoming a little more prominent in the 21st century.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, this kind of reminds me of a button that was at an event I think you guys were at, and it says that this is what a lifelong learner looks like. And I was like, yes, this definitely resonates with me. And just going back to how a lot of the times with the training and learning, you're like, read the manual and take a quiz. And I remember going through a lot of SOP, standard operating procedures, and reading through it, taking the test, passing, but not really retaining the information, even though I knew it was valuable.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's it, right? The retention rate on important information can be near zero, but you can still pass all your necessary certifications. Like, we've engineered these situations where someone is sitting through, sometimes they're clicking through, sometimes it's paper, and they're answering a bunch of inane questions. Sometimes they're clicking through, sometimes it's paper, and they're answering a bunch of inane questions that really is a CYA kind of activity for the company. It's a cover your butt kind of activity to make sure that people are ticked all the boxes and, so that you're not going to get sued if they make a mistake. But that doesn't really move the bar for what we want to do as entrepreneurs or company owners, or how we want to inspire our people to do amazing and different things. And so, I think there's a tremendous balancing act to play between the compliance and the measurement and the tracking of people's learning for, the basic skills. And then really asking yourself as a company, is this moving the bar on making us more effective, more efficient? Is this helping us surprise and delight our clients? Is this making our products better? And a lot of the time, training is designed to just get those tick boxes achieved as quickly as possible and allow people to get on with their job. And it's missing a huge opportunity.
Mm-hmm. So with respect to the different learning styles, what comes to my mind is when people say, oh, I'm like a visual learner, or I learn by doing. Can you go into more detail about the different learning styles and what kind of education materials that you create to accommodate these styles?
I'll take a stab at that. There's a lot of, maybe it's not doing it credit to call it lore in the educational world about, the auditory learner and the visual learner and the kinesthetic learner. And I learn by doing. And I think the fact of the matter is everybody learns to a certain, unless they have, specific learning challenges. Most people learn in all different ways and are much better served by something that is interesting and relatable and highly varied and short than they are by saying they're a visual learner and then watching a movie, or saying they're an auditory learner and then listening to a podcast or an audiobook. But they should all listen to this podcast. To a podcast or an audiobook, but they should all listen to this podcast. I think, in my personal opinion, and it's backed up by nothing but than my own experience, is that as long as the learning is short and varied, people will get what you want them to get out of it, as long as it's got some storytelling built in. I think at the end of the day, where we sometimes fail to provide inspiration and moments for people to really learn and transform their behavior is in the ability to do storytelling. So even just the lecture format of university, we can think back to a 3-hour lecture, a 2-hour lecture. I mean, it's not a process that's designed for people to be able to store information away unless you have an amazing prof. And if we all think back to the amazing profs we had, they were all up there telling stories.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I think that's the thing I would say first and foremost. But I don't want to totally dodge the question, because it's a great question. We have capability using technology now to have experiences that are highly immersive. A couple of years ago, got really, really popular and famous because I didn't have to explain to people anymore what augmented reality was. So augmented reality, this idea that you have a device in your hand with a camera, you're looking at the world through this camera in your device in your hand, and something else is being inserted into that reality. Something else is augmenting that reality. It's such a cool way to engage people, to have it be in their, literally in the palm of their hand, and present things to them in a way that relates to their reality, but which you can control as an author of that experience. So you can be someone authoring a learning experience and say, when they see this, I want to interject that. When they do this, I want to see that. And that can be as simple as providing hot spots in an experience that when they look at, they get a little bit more information, like serving up a video or a picture or an audio explanation, or a little avatar can walk out. Or it can be as sophisticated as they're really interacting with stuff that isn't there in an authentic way to help them in a training for something that they're about to do in real life soon, right? Mm-hmm. So this idea of you refer to SOPs, you refer to standard operating procedures. In a manufacturing facility, they might be called work instructions. So, imagine an augmented reality work instruction where you look at, you shine your phone at the right tool and it's telling you what to do next, or it's showing you what it would be. Or maybe you're even wearing a visor that you're looking at the real world through this visor, and it's overlaying what you should do next before you do it yourself. Mm-hmm. To teach you how to do it in a really effective way, or to make sure you're doing it safely, or maybe even to check that you're doing it right. So that's really cool. Augmented reality is a really neat way to do it, to inject that stuff. And then we've done a lot of work in augmented reality for clients in a bunch of different ways. Virtual reality is a little more extreme. That's where you're wearing the visor and you can't see the real world at all anymore. Mm-hmm. You only see the fake world, but you can move your head and your hands and interact with that. I think that's can be really engaging, but it's expensive and it's gimmicky, in my personal opinion, because you're just never going to get to the point. Again, my opinion, where it makes economic sense for every learner to have a set of goggles, because they're easily breakable and they're expensive. So I'm a huge believer in augmented reality. I also think that there's a lot of value to having an experience that looks like a video game on a computer screen, where you're just navigating by keyboard or by mouse, and there's nothing on your face and there's no camera involved. But because it's a cool and high fidelity experience, it can give you really effective training. And it can be a great way to break up someone giving you informational guidance about how to do something, which you just can't picture in your mind's eye. So you're being lectured at about how to do welding, for example. Not the right way to instruct someone on something that is so fundamentally kinesthetic that you have to build muscle memory. So there's great ways that you can, short of putting a welding torch in someone's hand, where it now becomes inexpensive and there's now safety issues, there's intermediate steps you can take to give someone an experience that approaches authenticity, really scalable and highly controllable.
I agree. And I think, learning styles in general, one thing we don't talk about, when you take a learning styles test and it's established that you're this kind of learner or that kind of learner, I do think there's something to that. But I also think our learning styles are fluid. It depends on how old you are. You can change as you get older, and you can change from situation to situation, and your mood can change your learning style. And I think one really great thing about having multiple types of technology at our disposal, and things that we create, is that it allows a learner to sort of learn nimbly, that they can pivot according to the situation and their mood and the particular needs, and subject area. We've all got that one subject from school where it just was hard. And, our typical learning style that, worked for everything else didn't work for that. And when you have learning technology, when you've got all these different formats and these different approaches, when you hit a wall in one sense, you can, okay, well, I'm going to try it this way. Formats and these different approaches. When you hit a wall in one sense, you can, okay, well, I'm going to try it this way. So it's about providing kind of a smorgasbord of different tools. If the video doesn't work, maybe the AR works. And if the AR doesn't work, well, maybe a game works. And so that's kind of, the approach we take is, well, what can we put out there? And having a variety of tools is just as important as having, one really, really good one, so that you're addressing not just different learners, but different needs of the same learner from time to time.
Mm-hmm. So I'd like to move on to talking about the trends in education tech. So we've touched on AR and VR. Do you foresee those two becoming growing in popularity with respect to how people learn? And then also, do you foresee any other trends coming up in the future?
Well, yeah, AR and VR are huge. VR, as Ben said, a little less so, because there's financial and safety concerns associated with that. And especially with younger learners, not quite sure how it impacts, development. But AR for sure. Gamified learning we're seeing is just exploding, and not just for kids either. Everybody wants to play and everybody wants to move up a level. And, we have gamification of all kinds of stuff in our life. When you use a rewards app, when you go get your coffee or something like that, and you get, oh, I got a star. So it's sort of being incorporated into our regular routine. So it's not surprising that people want to play, and they want to move up, and they want to level up, and they want to get rewards, and they want points and that sort of thing. And it's fun. I mean, we shouldn't outgrow the pleasure of learning. And I think a lot of adult learners and a lot of industries and corporations are figuring that out too, that it works for kids. It works really, really well for kids, and it works for grown-ups as well. So we've seen a lot of development in that, a lot of demand for that.
Yeah, and I would, to add to that, it's not unusual that someone, it's an interesting and poorly defined category. So there's gamified learning, which can be as simple as just you have a leaderboard written on the wall on a whiteboard, and whoever's got the highest score is at the top of the list. I mean, technically that's gamified learning. And then there's game-based learning, which means it's more like you're playing a game. For me, I think where there's going to be a lot of interesting work and the trends I see, and Amy touched on this, like you get that gold star. And you get 100 stars and you can get your macchiato for free, right? What I think is really interesting is that the gamification can be competitive and it can be collaborative. So we can hit people with that jolt of help me out.
Gratification.
Yeah, that jolt of gratification, that little burst of adrenaline when they get a point and when they move up in the list. But also that collaborative learning is extremely important, because you never understand something as well as after you've explained it. And you never actually test your understanding of a concept as well as when you try to explain it. It's strongly that you understand a concept and you go to explain it and you realize there are a lot of assumptions and missing pieces there. So I think the collaborative learning piece, and we can take cues from things like Minecraft, where people are building things and where they're interacting and chatting and moving towards a shared goal, or even just working on something together. But to be a little more formalized around the gold star, I mean, there's this idea of micro credentials, sometimes referred to as badges. So, as kids, we love to get stickers. As grown-ups, we love to get rewards points. We've been doing a lot of work lately on providing badging platforms for our clients, which permit them to give a very simple and small reward. And there's a platform called Open Badges, which integrates with social networking, things like LinkedIn. So if you receive badges XYZ, you could post them on your LinkedIn, and it's not just someone making a claim. It is actually something by Z. You could post them on your LinkedIn, and it's not just someone making a claim. It is actually something which a prospective employer can look at and see that there is merit to those badges, especially if it's something that they recognize. So that's a really cool thing, which I see as being really central to the future of the education system, universities and colleges, and then ultimately in your professional learning and certifications you get delivered in a way that are really auditable by people who might be interested in learning more about you or hiring you someday. But the key point there is you're not investing 2 years of your life to get a big diploma or a certification. These are small, very, very focused skills that are marketable and desirable. So that's why you would do the activity to get the badge, do the assessment to get the badge, and that's why you'd care about having it, which is a really cool thing that gets me very excited about the future of both learning, education, but also the way technology and platforms can pull it all together.
Mm-hmm. It kind of reminds me again, just another thing, a kid again. Like I never went to sleepaway summer camp, but I'm aware that you do these activities, and once you've completed them, you get badges. So in a sense, we're getting like digital badges that we could put on our LinkedIn profile.
I think you just touched on something really interesting too, that you go to sleepaway camp and you do stuff and you make stuff. And that's sort of a trend that we're seeing too. Educators want things that are authorable. How can I put my own spin on this? How can I load up, what I think is important into something? And learners want that too. They want to get their hands dirty. They want at the end of the day to be able to say, I made that, or I did that, or, I completed that. That was me. It wasn't just me sort of passively absorbing information and learning that way. I want my hands in it too. So anything you can do with technology to get people participating in it too and creating. And that's a trend that we're seeing as well.
Mm-hmm. So you have a sister company known as Red Team Media, and they've released an interactive ebook this past May. And they've released an interactive ebook this past May. And they'll be releasing another one in September. Could you describe that?
Yeah. Red Tea, it's had a lot of different labels put on it. It's our sister company, it's our pet project, it's our passion project. I have a background in philosophy. I'm one of those rare people. And while I was teaching, I got a little flustered that, the 18 to 25-year-olds that I had in college classes who were really smart, driven, wonderful people had never really learned to put an argument together. They didn't know that they were allowed to disagree. They didn't know how to disagree peacefully. And I saw it as sort of a skill that needed to be there, that, was not only a fundamental part of education, but also a personal skill. So as we were growing as a company, I was writing a manuscript of philosophy for kids. And when we sort of reached a critical mass where we had talent in-house to do it, we started putting out books and apps specifically that teach thinking skills. Some of them need to color, some of them need to play video games. So we've created sort of a variety of media around that. And it's kind of the only B2C part of our company. But again, it's a passion project. It was something that we wanted to put out there. And it allows us to play with new approaches on our own stuff. So yeah, we actually just this past week released a book. It's on Amazon.ca and .com right now. It's called If You Met a Yeti, and it asks a question, what is a human being? What are we like? And the ebook is just getting scrubbed up right now, so that should be out as well. And the ebook is interactive, so it's not just turning pages. You get to play with it. So yeah, that's the mission of that sort of arm of the company, is to teach children how to think instead of what to think. And, as a side benefit, we get parents on board and we get teachers on board. We've got lots of free resources on the website. So that was sort of us walking the walk. We talk constantly about teaching people how to think, raising better thinkers. These are books and apps that we put out to do just that.
What was that website again?
It's redtkids.com. Yeah.
Awesome.
But there's a variety.
So it turns out that you'll actually be presenting and exhibiting at a number of different venues this summer. So where can people find you this summer?
If you go to our Facebook page, and we'll have blog posts about it too. This summer, we are actually located at Country Heritage Park, Milton. So I'll be doing a couple of events there in the summer. We're going to be part of Hamilton Comic-Con in the fall. We're going to be part of Culture Days in Milton, the Telling Tales Festival, Word on the Street. So we're going to be busy over the next few months. And on the education side, we frequent educational conferences and tech conferences, and sometimes we exhibit, sometimes we just go and
one of the
find people.
One of the really great One of the really great things, you mentioned this, one of the really great things of Red Tea Kids is it is business to consumer. So we've got stuff that we sell directly to people. And on the enable education side, we're very much a business to business, right? If anyone, and we've got this amazing office that we just built last fall here at Country Heritage Park in Milton. Happy to tour anybody through if what we're saying about education and training resonates in any way. But what's really exciting about the Red Tea stuff is we get to talk to people.
Yeah.
We get to sell little nuggets of things to real people and get to meet them and talk to kids and see kids who have benefited from. I remember years ago, it was one of the first word on the streets. There was a little girl who climbed a tree and was reading one of your philosophy for kids books.
Yeah, we have a
up
picture
there.
of that.
Yeah, and so, it's neat because we do stuff and we know it has value. We know it has merit because our mission is to revolutionize education. That's what we're here to do. And our staff is on board with that and everyone is driven by that. But you don't always get to see that in the eyes of an individual kid in a moment. That's one of the really exciting things about having this sister company.
And we find a lot of parents, I get emails and parents will come back the following year to the same event and tell me, my kid found this on the coffee table, and then they read it and they came up to me and said, I've been thinking about this for years. Where have you been keeping this? Why have you been holding out on me? It is really special. And to know that 21st century learning is alive and well, children do it almost, naturally without us intervening, and to know that you've kind of put a scaffold up there so that there's somewhere where they can climb is really rewarding.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that you have a new office. Is this the new training studio that allows community members to use it?
love our new space.
Yeah.
It's everyone who comes in here kind of gets warm fuzzies. We have great coffee, and our staff is really, really nice and welcoming. But we also have these wonderful, we have 2 rooms actually where people do recording, and it makes it really, really simple and straightforward and clear to come in, really simple and straightforward and clear to come in and teach a class or run a workshop. And not only for us to capture it on video and to polish it up so that it looks great, but also to have a teacher walk you through in advance. You know, this is how people are actually going to perceive this training that you're doing. Can we frame it this way? And can we sort of lump things together by learning objectives so that it's really going to resonate with the end user?
Interesting. So I want to just touch base about encouraging girls and women into pursuing STEM careers. So what advice would you have for girls who are looking to get into STEAM? And then the second part to the question is, say for women who are maybe considering a career change focusing on STEM, what advice would you give to them?
I like you said the word STEAM, which I always really like. I don't particularly believe in just focusing on one subject area. And I think if you are a science, technology, engineering, math, and STEAM has an arts component in it. And I've heard the term STREAM used as well, where you put in a reading and writing element to it. So, I mean, being an all-around great thinker with a bunch of different interests is key, I think. And STEM isn't just STEM anymore. You've got people who are programmers, and we have people on staff who are programmers who are also photographers and singers and chefs. And so being an all-around thinker, having that critical thinking component and being able to communicate and being creative, I think is really key to getting into STEM fields now. And, you know, I don't like saying, you know, that women and men are fundamentally different, but I think women are socialized to have these sort of softer skills, if you will, that are, you know, arts education too. So, you know, as STEM opens up a little bit and the arts are welcomed in, and communication and critical thinking and all these sort of soft skills are women in it, I think the environments and the culture will change. So my advice to women getting into it is just, you know, be as versatile and nimble as you can in your thinking, and seek out other women in STEM, because they're out there. You know, there's organizations that are being formed all the time to encourage women and girls to go in. There's still definitely a gap. There's still definitely, you know, discrepancies in the number of women in there versus the number of men. But you know, find a community, find your peeps, and you know, think nimbly and be open-minded. I don't have a background in STEM at all, and I'm in STEM, so that was kind of key to me getting into it as well.
I would say that to an individual who's contemplating a career change, perhaps you know, at the stage of their life where they already are on a certain path or already have a certain degree, my advice would be, in addition to what Amy said, my advice would be to seek. In addition to what Amy said, my advice would be to seek out skill and competency, but don't burn a ton of time going back for another degree necessarily. Learn as much as you can. Go to college or take some online courses. Do some stuff and see if that's what you want to do. I think a lot of people invest a lot of time to go down a path, getting a second degree. If you already have a degree, you can get in the door if you have the necessary skills. So that's a piece of advice I'd give to an individual adult. I think what's as important, kind of bigger picture, is for all of us, including us, we have a 9-year-old girl. There is no measured difference in capability or interest between boys and girls when they're really young in STEM and other subjects. But the girls' interest falls off dramatically once they get older. Like we're talking once they get into 6th, 7th, 8th grade, and then in high school. So I think what we need to do as parents or as community members is talk them out of losing that interest. Make them to see and do things that are exciting. Go to robotics competitions to see them. Watch cool stuff on Netflix that is about science and engineering and how the world works, and just don't let them lose interest for merely social reasons. We have to break that mold a little bit.
That's really great advice. So if people wanted to learn more about Enable Education, where can they find you?
EnableEducation.com.
Yeah. And as we said earlier, we love visitors. If it resonates with someone and they think they might like to come in and look around and see what we can help them with. We love visitors. We have great coffee and lovely views. Yeah.
And all the social media handles that get at via Enable Education.
Yeah, we're all over the social media.
And then for the critical thinking for kids material, redtkids.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again for your great insight and advice. It was really lovely chatting with you both.
Thanks, Karen.
It was really lovely chatting with you both.
Thanks, Karen. It was a real pleasure.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Bacon Bits and Bytes podcast. If you enjoyed the content, please subscribe, leave a review on iTunes, and share this podcast with your family and friends. You can follow the podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Bacon Bits and Bytes. And on Twitter, it's baconbits_bytes. Ciao for now.